This video is powered by the pros at Pascal Air Plumbing and Electric. Arkansas owned, Arkansas operated. GoPascal.com.
All right, let's talk with Brett Dolan from Touchdown Radio and all sorts of Arkansas athletics and all sorts of other events that he will call play-by-play for. Perfect Game and the like. Brett, how you doing, man?
Hey, I'm good. How about you guys?
We're good. We're outdoors. We're enjoying the fall hunting sale at Jelco, and it's nice to actually be able to do a radio show outdoors without melting into the concrete. And we're excited about an Arkansas game that feels like you got a worthy opponent in BYU. You had sounds like you had a pretty interesting game in Miami this last Saturday, man. And I don't know if I saw the Texas A&M defense faltering as badly as it sounds like they did, but it also seems like Miami's passing attack might be on point.
I think you're right on both. I mean, it was a better Miami team than I thought. Tyler Van Dyke, 5 touchdown passes. He's got some weapons. 2 new coordinators in year 2 under Mario Cristobal, and they both called extremely good games. But I'm with you, Phil. I think A&M's back end of their defense, their safeties, their corners, I was surprised they were that bad. So that's probably good news for Arkansas and K.J. Jefferson coming up soon. I would say their quarterback, A&M Wigman, was as tough as I thought he would be. He just couldn't score enough points to offset what their defense allowed.
Yeah, and that's the thing of it. It's like, it seems like the offense is roaring for A&M, and maybe that's expected under Bobby Petrino. And I know Wagman's been really good for the first couple of games. But, man, I mean, I said on our Your Boy, My Boy segment the other day, I gave Matt Your Boy, and it was DJ Durkin, and it's not necessarily what I think they expected from a Durkin defense right now.
Yeah, not even close, and that has to be a concern because with A&M, it's always 1 step forward, 2 steps back, and there's concern. I mean, Jimbo's not the only head coach that has a monster deal and maybe an unsettled fan base. But, considering the volume and the caliber of recruits they get compared to some of these other teams, they should be better. And I don't know what that means for them going forward, but I do think Miami's probably a top 15, top 20 team, and that surprised me.
What was the atmosphere like inside Hard Rock Stadium? How many Miami fans do you think were there?
Yeah, I know it's a good question. I don't know if it was like 45, 50,000. I heard people telling me it was one of the bigger, louder crowds they've had, but it feels like we have to grade on a curve because you and I were used to going to these SEC venues where there's 75, 80,000, 100,000, and they're lined up for 8 hours before the game tailgating. It is different, right, when you get to Miami or even the ACC, so you have to kind of devalue a little bit of that, but I would say it was still a good atmosphere, and it just wasn't maybe what we're used to at Georgia, Arkansas, A&M, LSU, Alabama, Auburn, but it was still pretty good.
Brett, I was really impressed with Texas going in Tuscaloosa and kind of being physical. I don't know how much you got to see of that. Is Texas back, and is Alabama and Saban is that era kind of coming to an end?
Well, Matt, I don't know about you. I was surprised at one thing with Alabama, and I saw most of the second half when I got back to my hotel. I was stunned at the number of big plays they gave up. And sometimes big plays are a result, maybe a broken play. Somebody slips and falls, or one person misses an assignment. It did seem like there was way too much of that for a Nick Saban team. Now, give Stark credit. He found some mismatches, but then Quinn Ewers took advantage of them. And it's hard for these college quarterbacks to hit the deep ball with regularity and make the deep play. It wasn't for Ewers the other day, but it seems like that has to be a big concern for Alabama, the number of big plays they gave up, because that just shouldn't be a staple of any Nick Saban team.
I was surprised, too. I texted Phil during the game, and I said it's like the Alabama D-backs didn't know how to track ball and man at the same time.
Can we say the same thing about the A&M defense? Because, Tyler Van Dyke and that receiving core, big play after big play.
You're right, and I don't know exactly what causes that, if it's just inexperience or they're not being coached up to the level that they should be. But we expect teams, again, whether it's Alabama or A&M, to at least have a caliber of athlete or player back there. But it wasn't the case. And, to see Alabama give up a couple of, say, 30-plus yard plays in a game feels odd. To see them give up 5 or 6, and especially at times when it felt like if they get off the field, they might have a chance to sneak out a win at home again, and they just kept giving up the big plays. So credit to Texas. I didn't think they were that good. But, guys, it does feel like the overall theme is maybe the SEC isn't the big bully that we thought they were. LSU loses against Florida State. We saw A&M go lose at Miami. Alabama lost at home to Texas. Maybe this is a little bit of a down year compared to what we've become accustomed to over the last 5 to 10 years.
Be a real down year for Ole Miss, I think, if they lose at home to Georgia Tech. What do you know about Georgia Tech?
The funny thing is, it's not the Georgia Tech team we think of. Haynes King, a former A&M transfer, has thrown for like 7 touchdown passes and about 600 yards in 2 games. So to watch them spread wide receivers out and throw the ball around the yard just feels different, because they were one of the outliers of teams that played with a different style for so many years. But they want to come and kind of compete with the big boys, and like everybody else, whether it's grabbing a Haynes King from A&M. They got this kid named Blaylock, who was a top 40 recruit out of the state of Georgia, who went to Georgia and didn't play much. And he looks like a big-bodied physical receiver catching touchdown passes. And obviously it worked out for him to be able to transfer to a school like Georgia Tech and play and produce. I don't know how good they may be over a long season, but it does look different to see Georgia Tech trying to compete. Now, if you want to compete in a track match or track meet with Ole Miss, you better be ready to go, because they love to get it up and down at home. And considering what their schedule looks like over the next few weeks, once they get through Georgia Tech, whether that's at Alabama, LSU at home, and then Arkansas, and at Auburn, that's a gauntlet for a 4-game stretch. They better find a way to win this game.
It looks like Judkins hasn't really gotten going yet, right? I mean, 2 games in, averaging 3.5 yards per carry. Has Ole Miss, are they dealing with some of the same issues Arkansas is, as far as a team that is known for being able to run the ball that's had some trouble doing it so far?
It has looked different. You're right. Last week, 18 for 48 against Tulane. And considering last year, when you looked at his numbers at the end of last season, and you put them next to Herschel Walker's numbers from his freshman season, I mean, they are almost identical. Carries, yards, touchdowns. And we know what Herschel did in that freshman season. So Judkins was in some unique territory. It hasn't been the case. Now, last year they had 2,000-yard rushers, and they no longer have that dual monster attack. And obviously they do sling the ball around the yard quite a bit, and they've had a number of receivers put up some filthy numbers. But it does feel like that has not been quite what they would want from a Judkins standpoint. And whether it's this week or next week or when they get into the SEC play, if they're going to be a relevant team, and that would be 7 to 9 wins, they need a lot more out of him and a lot more out of their running game, like Arkansas and other teams do as well.
Yeah, that being said, what do you think? What do you expect out of this Arkansas-BYU matchup? Do you think? I think BYU is going to be halfway physical with this, and I kind of wonder if Arkansas can rush for 150 yards.
You know, Matt, and you might be able to answer this better than me. In watching the 2 Arkansas games, and again, I've had to do it off tape or off TV, not in person, I can't make up my mind whether they're just kind of pacing themselves a little bit and maybe not showing a ton early, or whether they're sluggish. And I can't get that feeling. I hope at the end of this weekend I have an idea whether they're kind of building slow and trying to, take it easy with some of the usage from some of their guys, or whether they just aren't hitting on all cylinders. I don't know the answer to that right now. I do think we'll have a much better idea after the BYU game.
Yeah, I do too. Could you see a team like Ole Miss or Arkansas winning the West this year? With you've had Alabama, LSU, and A&M all lose, although they were non-conference big time opponents. Think it is that wide open?
Boy, it's a fun conversation to have. I think you're right, because a couple of weeks ago, or even a month ago, we would have thought that sounded somewhat crazy. And while you're right, these have been non-conference games for LSU and for Alabama. It did expose a few warts. And I guess that kind of goes back to what I thought about this conference entering this year. Without a Stetson Bennett at Georgia, without a Bryce Young at Alabama, it was going to be kind of a changing of the guard when it comes to some of the elite position players. How did teams respond around that? And I think it's a fun conversation. And for Razorback fans, that's why I know this fan base wants to see this team start to build. They want to see them take down A&M in a couple of weeks, because it would open that conversation up a lot more if they can take care of business and win the games they should win. And then it always gets down to finding a way to win a couple of games that you're not supposed to win, whether they could kind of flip this Western Division this year. I think it's a storyline that I didn't anticipate talking about, again, maybe just a few weeks ago or a month ago. But I think there's at least the possibility of discussing that now.
Looking at the touchdown radio schedule, Brett, you got Georgia Tech Ole Miss this Saturday. They're letting you call an Iowa game. He's an Iowa grad. Iowa versus Penn State. I mean, is this even allowed?
Jimmy Franklin coming to town.
Officials are not allowed to work games. They're not allowed to referee games if they have any connection to that school. It should be the same for national broadcasters, my friend.
Well, it isn't a thrill for me either. This is a whiteout in Happy Valley. It's going to be a great atmosphere. I do have some tendencies to be a little frustrated at times with Iowa, and now that I have to be on the air for 3.5 hours, I don't think that's a match made in heaven. Gino Toretta will tell you he can take the week off of preparation because I've got it handled when it comes to Iowa's warts or their successes on defense or whatever we will discuss. I am looking forward to it. I will say, be careful what you ask for. I begged him last year not to take the Iowa at Ohio State game, but we did anyhow, and I had to kind of live through that, even though the Hawks frustrated C.J. Stroud for about 3 quarters. But, no, I'm looking at that one, and I think we've got another Iowa game on our schedule later on, so we'll see if I can survive. And then, Phil, you can appreciate this. I think we'll probably get back to Pittsburgh at somewhere like 1 or 2 in the morning. I'm on a 6 a.m. flight the next day, 2 flights, and coming back to call a volleyball game that afternoon in Arkansas. So it's going to be a treacherous couple of days for me between surviving Iowa and then the trip back for a volleyball game.
Yeah, but you got a nice hotel right there at the Pittsburgh airport. That Hyatt is top notch. You'll be okay.
Well, I'll get a couple of hours sleep there, if that. If Iowa wins, there will not be much sleep, and if they lose, it'll be a restless sleep.
Hey, Brett, what did I see you mention? I think you tweeted about it. An anniversary of a no-hitter. Was it 2008 with the Astros?
Yeah, no, this is one of the more bizarre things I've been a part of. So the hurricane came through, and we kind of battened down the hatches in 2008. That would have been Harvey, and we lost a home series against the Cubs. So we all sat around with various degrees of damage, and all of a sudden Major League Baseball decided, well, we need to play this. Houston was in the pennant race. So we played the home series in Milwaukee. And the Cubs were there waiting for us for a couple of days. We gathered everybody up. Some people had a hard time getting to the ballpark because of flooding and debris on the roads. And we took off. We landed in Milwaukee. We went to the ballpark that day, like a minor league travel day, all the worse for the wear, having done nothing over 2 or 3 days. And then Carlos Zambrano went out and no-hit the Astros. And I remember Lance Berkman joking after the game. He said, "I was surprised our fans so lustily booed us because it was all Cub fans at a home game in Milwaukee after a hurricane in a pennant race." They did much better the next day. They got 1 hit against Ted Lilly. So that was a bizarre sequence in Astros history to get a no-hit on a home game in Milwaukee, flying day of game. And then that was kind of the beginning of the end of that wild card chase in 2008.
Yeah, it's kind of a standalone experience. How big was your smile when you saw the news that Heston Kirby got called up to the Orioles?
Oh, man, I don't know about you. It just pumped up. I mean, the poor guy lost about 1.5 years because of injuries, and all these top prospects for Baltimore kept getting called up. And, Phil, from day one, I mean, Heston Kirby was one of my favorites because he looked like a man among boys as an 18-year-old. And I just am thrilled for him. I can't wait to see what his professional career looks like. And it's hard to be the number 2 pick in a draft and kind of live up to the hype. We see some other guys struggle or fail. I expect him to have a great career, and boy, I just can't wait to see how it unfolds with Heston in Baltimore.
BetOnline is your #1 source for all your betting needs. Get the latest odds, lines, and matchup reports for baseball, boxing, golf, and more. BetOnline continues to be the fastest and easiest way to place your wagers, including live betting and your favorite casino and card games available to play right from your phone. Head to the website or use your mobile device to sign up today and get in on the action. Remember to use our promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Bet online, where the game starts.